This is IBM Museum. In this video, I want to run the system information tool set on my IBM PS2 Model 85X. And that's a system that I have Novell Netware on 3.12. And it's my I-class server. It's we've seen videos of it of Model 25s booting from this server, doing what's called a RIPL, remote initial program load over the network. But I've not shown the server side. And prior to running the system information tool, I wanted to go through and just have it boot up to the Novell Netware, and just to kind of show that aspect of it. That's a process that takes a little bit of time. And I did also want to show my Ethernet switch. It's I think it's an 8275 IBM model, and it's really unique that it goes through and has some display panel that it almost shows the network utilization like what you'd see on a basically an old school graphic equalizer. Kind of neat. And I've had that on video before as well, but I just wanted to go through and show that. I don't have any client workstations connected up to the switch. I've just got the server connected in, but we'll go through. I'll get turned around. I'll power up the switch first, and then we can power up the server and go through that sequence, and then get over to running set. So let's get that process started. And I was wanting primarily just to do a close-up of the this panel on the switch, and also the what's called the information panel on this system. And normally the Model 85 did not come with an info panel. Both submodels of the Model 85 did not. And but just due to some great investigative work, it was learned that the circuitry is there to the driver chips to support info panel. If you put one on the Model 85X, which this is, and the KN model, which is a little bit higher level of Model 85, does not have that circuitry there to run the info panel, even if you have a spare and installed it like this. And but I went through and added one to my X, and this may be the only Model 85 around that has an info panel on it. We'll see that fire up in just a moment. Now this Ethernet switch, it does not have an on-off switch. It's just you put power to the unit, and it goes through and powers up. It's going through its startup sequence right now. I think it's actually complete. In the time that I spent talking, it went through that process fully. So let's go through and power up the Model 85, and we'll get that on screen as well for as it goes through. But you can see that info panel, and that gives the post codes in this case as it boots up. And there's even a driver that was done for some of the operating systems. I think you could load it from DOS or like Windows NT if you had that installed, where you could put up a display of what you wanted in that info panel window. And of course, for the I don't think that was ported over to Novell Netware, so we just see the CP codes here. So let me get to where we've got that. Okay, and it's going through, it's counted all the RAM memory, and I've actually got 64 megabyte on this unit. It's the Model 85 is based off of normally 46 CPU. And this actually has a Cyrix 46DX266, I believe. And we'll see a little bit more of that when we get into the SIT utility to find out what that reports. And it's going through right now and starting up the Novell Netware 3.12 that's on the hard drive. And normally you don't want to interrupt this process. It's just like modern day Windows where you don't want to abruptly shut down, or more like the file systems with like Linux, or where it mounts the file system, and if you power it down, you can actually corrupt data on the hard drive. And for this process, you don't want to interrupt that loading the network at all. And in portions of this, it can take a little bit of time to go through and to load. And the IBM SCSI adapter is talking about, that's actually built into the system planer. And we can actually even run the SCSI level on this as well at a later point once we get over to the programs I do have on that diskette. Okay. Okay, the print server, and then it gets into the monitor. So it shows all the uptime and can show connected systems. I don't have any other stations, of course, connected to that switch. Sometime I can go through and connect up some stations, and we can look through on what it looks like on the server side as we go through and have those stations rippling from the server. But in this case, we want to go through and exit the system monitor. Okay, and that puts us back at the Novell prompt. We're going to actually type in down to take the system down. Okay, and then we're going to do exit to return to DOS. And so I actually went through this sequence, and it just turned into a very long and involved video that I went through, and it booted Netware twice because I wasn't able to get it to boot from the diskette. I actually learned some things as far as what SIT is looking for, that system information tool. And so if we go over to the in fact, let's just do it as this. I mean, we can do that we want to run the SIT from the A drive. Oh, I guess I have to put actually had to put the diskette in the drive. And I did R for retry. Okay, and this is what I faced before, and I kind of, it's actually where I got, when I got investigating, it's DR-DOS release 6, it's on here, and DR-DOS back in the day actually reported itself as an earlier version of MS-DOS to programs, just for compatibility reasons. A lot of time it reported itself as MS-DOS 3.3, and this is the first time that I've gotten the warning from the system information tool that it has to have that DOS 4 or later. And so I went through and I actually had to create a reference diskette and get in there and change the startup sequence to get it booting from a floppy diskette if that was in the drive. And let's get me back on the screen. Yeah, there we go. And so we can go through. Let's actually switch over to the A drive, and this is actually a bootable diskette. Now I did put the SCSI level command as it, or the utility from IBM on this diskette as well, and that is able to run just fine. It's not looking for any modern level of DOS in that regard, or it's fine with the DR-DOS in this case. And so it identifies the IBM SCSI, and that is built into the system planar, and it identifies that as the microcode as version 25 hex. And I've long ago I tested this system. I've got that in my chart as well for what this version that reported. This I think is the SCSI behaves as the Spock adapter that IBM had, the caching SCSI controller on an adapter, and it's got virtually the same components. I don't think it's got a cache level for the SCSI controller actually on the planar, but I'd have to look through again. I know there's a little bit of debate that we looked through what chips are on there and things like that. And this would be just like the Bermuda planar of the models 76 and 77 also had that Spock level of SCSI adapter built into the system planar. So the way I'm going to get around this is actually, like I say, I made this a bootable diskette. I actually went in there and changed the boot order. So if I do a Control-Delete, we will get this system booting from the floppy diskette that I now have in the drive. Okay, and it's going through and reading the diskette behind me, starting MS-DOS in this case, that boot diskette that I created. And since I don't have an autoexec.bat, it prompts me for time and date. I can just simply press the enter key. And so let's go through and start running the SIT program. And you'll see some of the graphics in this case look like they're a lot more quicker, that initial screen, than what systems that we've seen before. I think this is the most powerful that we've tested, of system that we've tested with the system information tool on my channel. Okay, so we have, just from the top, we're going to go into adapter information. Slot 1 and 2, No adapter present. Slot 3 is listed as unknown. Please report. I think that that's some, that's probably one of the network adapters that I have in there. And I actually have 2 network adapters in there on this machine. And in fact, I think I'd have to look up that adapter ID or POS ID. And it's probably either the 3COM adapter I have in there or the Olicom network adapter I have in there. No adapter present for, I mean, we can look at the values in here. And I don't know who you report this to. The IBM's not keeping track of that stuff anymore. And then on slot 5, I actually have what's called the SVGA adapter A, and that's based on a Cirrus Logic chip. And excuse me, that's actually based on an IBM Texas Instrument chipset that has 512 KB of video RAM. And there's been some ground even learned on that angle as well, mainly on that same chip being on a lot of the some of the planers of the PS2s, and the ability to increase the VRAM and run the driver and use that chip a little bit more capably. Okay, and so it displays some information there about that adapter. We get down to this other adapter, whatever it is, of, like I say, it's probably one of the network adapters. And we could look up that POS idea to know what adapter that is. Going down to disk information, hard drive by drive letter, disk C, and that's listed as NW-DOS or Netware DOS. And the drive size, I don't think it's that small. Of only a 7 megabyte with only 3.25 megabytes available. I don't think that that's correct. And okay, that's more like it. That's the true capabilities. It's I think that's even an IBM drive, 400 megabyte. And so we're back to thinking it's 7 megabytes. I don't know what it's. Okay. Okay, so we have the reference partition on the system, a 12-bit FAT partition is a 7, and that's just, yeah, it's just seeing that particular FAT partition on there for the purposes of DOS is what it's seeing there, and then the majority of the drive. In fact, let's see if it gives. Okay. So that's partition 1 of the underlying DOS, or that DOS being on the system basically for just utility level with NetWare. And there is the NetWare partition. And we still have some of those ghost 0 KB unallocated partitions here. Okay. And this is a 2.88 megabyte diskette drive. which also runs natively. I think the Model 85 even was shipped from the factory with those, just like a lot of the models of the Model 95. And I have it correctly labeled as boot disk. So we boot it from it. Keyboard information. 101 and 102 and 122 keyboards are supported. So that's that host connect keyboard. Could work on here. Standard keyboard ID of the 83AB, which is the standard 101, 102 keyboard. Set type-o-matic rate supported. Set type-o-matic rate, or get and set type-o-matic rate is supported. Returns to default type-o-matic rate supported. Okay, memory information. Memory hardware. Okay, so it's saying that I have 8 modules of 8 megabyte apiece that are 70 nanosecond, and a total of 64 megabyte on the system planar. Supported upgrade memory expansion modules this system supports. 2 megabyte 80 nanosecond, 2 megabyte 70 nanosecond, 4 megabyte 80 nanosecond, 4 megabyte 70 nanosecond, 8 megabyte 80 nanosecond, and 8 megabyte 70 nanosecond. So I have the fastest memory, the highest capacity that this system recognizes. The Model 85X is able to run that maximum of 64 megabyte of RAM if you have the modules for it. Okay. Total usable, base memory, extended memory, system board memory, adapter card memory. And it's able to have all the memory on the system planar in this instance. Cacheable memory is the entire RAM space. Okay. Memory mapping, system RAM, video RAM, and then the adapter ROMs. That might be something associated with like the SCSI, IBM SCSI on the planar. Treated as an adapter, as it were. System ROM. Okay. Okay, miscellaneous technical information. Second interrupt chip is present. Real-time clock is present. Wait on external event is unsupported. Extended BIOS data area is allocated. System has a microchannel bus. DMA supported. DMA supports 32-bit address space, and that's and then keyboard functionality call supported. Return POS data call supported. Return memory map call supported. Enable disable processor functions call supported. Non-8042 keyboard controller in system. Data streaming is unsupported. SCSI subsystem present on system board, as I said. Information panel is not installed. And so it was, the Model 85 was released, and it was just listed BIOS and didn't have that extra little bits put in there to support the information panel. And I ought to see sometime, and if they locked it out that way and they're listing it's not being present, I doubt if the calls to use the information panel are present in the system BIOS. This is not an IML system. SCSI support is in the IML image. Okay. Mouse information, the mouse is not present. Operating system information, and that's from booting from the diskette, of course. Okay, model and processor information. It identifies it correctly as an IBM PS2 Model 85. Processor is the 80486. Speed 33 megahertz. And it's just keying off of the, I think, hard-coded values. I think it's a DX2 66 megahertz. It's actually in the system. Coprocessor is built into the 4060X. Internal cache enabled. External cache is disabled. And the X doesn't have any external cache. That's in the Model 85 KNN has the external cache module. So the BIOS model is F8, and we've seen that is 386 SX plus systems are always as the F8. There's not really much difference in there. IBM didn't really split up the F8. That covers a lot of the models. A submodel is 48. BIOS revision 02. BIOS ROM date of the 14th of February, Valentine's Day in 1993. And system board POS ID FFDC. Okay, parallel and serial port information. And that's the basic info, one serial port, one parallel port. SCSI information. And we went through, and so here it calls the SCSI controller adapter 0 slot on is system board, showing that that's not an adapter. It's one SCSI device connected with the hard drive, and some of the information here. Of course, adapter is enabled. Cache buffer supported, cache buffer enabled. And of course, the SCSI ID is set to 7, like a lot of the IBM SCSI is. System control block, compatibility level, current, maximum synchronous data rate of 5 megabits per second. SCSI global timeout value 60 seconds. Port address is the standard of the 3540 hex, and it shows the connected SCSI hard drive, and it's on, I think it's the physical unit number it's actually SCSI ID 6 for that. Okay. Now, in all that SCSI adapter information, it does not give the microcode version of that SCSI adapter. So system information tool doesn't have that code of SCSI level built into it. And I think I noticed that years ago with the and I thought we looked at all that detail already. Maybe that's another place. And video information, it's interesting. It just doesn't show anything to that. That's not functionality built in the system information tool as well, either, apparently. So, but that's the system information tool, and also SCSI level on the Model 85 X version, and so it had some more areas that were more expanded, but we get to see kind of the timeline that the system information tool came out. It's not necessarily aware of those non-IBM adapters that are in there. And so that's kind of a little bit of limitation. As they're saying, please report, but there's not a mechanism now to report those adapters not being listed. It's not like IBM's going to rewrite the system information tool to handle those adapters now. But if you like this video, go ahead and click on that like button. Please subscribe to my channel for this wide-ranging content that I do. And that's all I have for now. This is IBM Museum. Thank you.